Everybody, this was a completely non-official wrong way to start our hangout today. But as usual, when you're taking technology and abusing it and pushing it far beyond its limits to connect with other human beings around the world, you break it. And that's what we did. We broke it today, right before this really important show with David Amerland. So now I'm going to push the slide that I was supposed to start with. This is the Office Hours Friday edition. We're interviewing David Amerland, and we've got special guests, Victor and Greg from Canada Gold, who actually have some decent questions for David, so that we're not going to listen to me ramble on for an hour. Hey, Alex, how you doing today? You're on camera.
Good. My puppy just woke up. I'm hoping he's going to fall. Oh, there we go. Okay. I was like, oh my God, am I going to have to deal with this right now? That would be great. I'm good.
You're good? All right, let's blow through the professional introduction of David so we can actually bring him on camera here. David Amerland is basically one of the coolest people that Alex and I have ever met in Google Plus for many, many reasons. All right, he's an author, he's a speaker, he's an analyst, he's an advisor for big old corporations, and he blogs for companies like Forbes and Social Media Today. And yes, I wrote this. I took the time to write a script, which you know I never do when I'm introducing people. All right. David's own words describe him better, and I'm just going to quote him from his bio. These days, I do only strategy. Thanks to semantic search, social media marketing and SEO have largely converged. That right there is worth $1 billion. If you can understand that sentence, okay, you don't need to pay another consultant. David just gave you the key to everything that's happening right now. Okay, they've converged. So he doesn't really focus on much but strategy, because you don't have to look at nuts and bolts SEO. All right. This guy's written a book on semantic search, but we're here to talk to him today about his next book, his other book, as soon as I can find my cursor, which is the Google Plus Hangouts for Business book. We'd like to welcome David and hope that he shows up in this shot, and it looks like he's going to show up without Alex. So it's you and me, David, and a blank spot for Alex. How you doing today?
I'm absolutely great, thank you. I love being here. I love what you're doing, and I know you're doing a lot of things on the fly. But really, we're learning so much from this, and I think this is brilliant. It's really, really good, and I'm grateful to see it in action.
Thank you very much. It's geez, not even that double shot works. One of these double shots here we go. Here, this looks much more normal for people on TV. I really appreciate that. I got to say this. And we said this off camera, now we're on air, but your book has blown me away, because you have put into words what Alex and I have been verbalizing and trying to show with our shows. But you've managed to put it all into what I would consider a manual. I think your title is deceiving, because it's not just about Hangouts for Business. It's about understanding the paradigm shift that you reference and just what businesses can do with it. And so thank you for creating the singular sales tool that I need to actually promote what we do in this industry.
Oh, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Now, all right, Alex, we're going to bring in Canada Gold. So this shot still works. Hey, Alex.
Hey, puppy's awake, by the way, so I apologize in advance.
That's all right.
That's all right.
It'll be cool. Okay, so Canada Gold, Greg Neilson and Victor Minichiello. I got the Italian in there, Victor, just for you. All right.
It sounds very good, John.
Thank you. These guys run the largest gold selling and buying operation in Canada. They've got stores all across the country, and Alex and I have had the privilege of working with them as a large corporate brand to try to figure out how they can come into Google Plus the right way, how they can engage their customers, how they can brand and market themselves using the technology that they have at their hands. And it's been a challenge, because there's different things that you have to consider for brands than you do for little old guys like me and Alex, right? A personal entity does not have the same responsibilities and stress and issues to deal with that a corporate brand does. So we brought these guys together, David Amerland, Canada Gold, so we could ask some questions, have a conversation, and engage in a broadcast around this topic, engagement broadcasting and Google Plus Hangouts for Business. So now let's see if my shot with those guys came out. And I gotta find it now. Everything got destroyed earlier today. Here we go. One moment, we'll go back to old school. So that's Victor, although it says David Amerland, and that's Greg. Yikes, that's not Greg. We'll go back to Victor. See, this whole production gets ruined when we got to do it like this. So, how you doing, Victor?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, John?
Not too bad. Here, we'll get that fixed in a minute. Everybody's going to be David Amerland in that shot today. So there's Victor with Canada Gold.
I'm okay with being David Amerland for a second.
All right. You're going to confuse the hell out of everyone. So, and we've got Greg with us today as well with Canada Gold. There you go, everybody. Greg is David Amerland as well. But the truth is that this is actually Brian Gardner from The Good Wife. I've been joking with Greg about that for months now since we started watching the show. So.
Yeah, I was thinking about the same thing. I thought he looks like Will.
Yeah, exactly. And I really wasn't intimidated by Greg from Canada Gold until I realized that he looked like Will, the lawyer. And I was like, oh,
Will Gardner, that's me.
So let's see what other shots we got. Oh, look, here's a messed up shot with David and Alex.
Lawyer by day, gold buyer by night.
That's brilliant. That's so cool, right?
That is awesome. That is perfect. All right, so let's get these questions going. Let's see if I can't pull up a shot that makes sense. Greg, here's what I need to do. I'm gonna push the shot over to single, like an old school hangout, and let you just ask a question. Get you started there so that I can fix at least one of these shots so that we can continue. Okay. So I'm putting you on the spot, Greg. It's all you. What do you have to ask David Amerland?
Okay. Sure. Yeah, no, I had lots of questions for you, David. I mean, probably, to get things started, what really struck me about Google Plus myself, and then I know you mentioned it quite a bit in your book, was that it's really an opportunity for organizations and brands and businesses, or anybody for that matter, to break out on the web and not necessarily be anonymous and put a face to what you're doing on the internet. And it seems like the next big step forward on the web. Up to this point, so much has been put into just building your brand and focusing on that, and not necessarily on the people behind the brand. But this seems to be like the next big step in terms of putting a face to the brand. And I wanted to maybe get your thoughts a little bit more on that.
Okay. Okay. I'm very glad you brought all this up, because essentially there is a trend which is going. It's both new and old. Old in terms that over the last 18 months, we have heard increasingly that brands must behave like people and people must behave like brands. And we never really, it's a nice soundbite. We never really quantified it. I was in SMX London just last week, in London, and the thing which came across when I was comparing it to SMX East, which was in New York just last September, was that essentially everything that traditional search engine optimizers, SEOs, and traditional marketers presented this time touched on points which are uniquely human. They talked about trust, they talked about authority, they talked about reputation. In the past, they used to talk about links and link building and page rank and building SEO juice and sculpting your pages and stuff like that. Now, this transition is not accidental. It is a trend of creating that human touch point between a business, a brand, and its audience. And the question here, which is inherent in your statement, is how do you do that exactly? And Hangouts and Hangouts on Air provide one of the best shortcuts we have in order to achieve that. The reason they do that is because they break down barriers very quickly. They are able to create a smaller friction threshold between a brand and its audience, and they inherently present a very human face. Now, the moment you do that, you begin to make a different assessment. So essentially, we come to a situation where the workforce of any kind of business, the people behind the brand, by moving to the front of it, actually begin to power its reach. They begin to connect as people. They begin to convince at a very human level. And I'm going to give you a very concrete example on this. When you think of search, you think of Google. You don't really think of Bing. And this gets worse the moment you step outside the US. Within the US, Bing does have an audience, although it is fairly small. But when you get into Europe and surrounding territories, the percentage of people who use Bing is incredibly small. which brings me to the point that Dwayne Forrest, that was the senior marketing director for marketing manager for Bing, has to step out and actually become the face of the organization. And he does a marvelous job, even though the conditions are incredibly adverse. Bing has a very small market share. The results it presents us with in Europe are not very good because there are a lot of difficulties that Microsoft itself has to overcome to achieve that. But he's so winning as a person that he actually overcomes a lot of the friction and a lot of the resistance that is traditionally associated with search, and people are actually willing to give him a chance and give his company a chance and give his product a chance. And this is just a classic example in a very polarized environment, because search is basically mostly towards Google, and it goes, it gives a very small slice of the action to all the other companies. But you can see how the human connection immediately allows you to basically reassess the way you make your own judgments as a consumer and give somebody else a chance. Now, if you present this in a larger context or in even a more narrow niche, perhaps, within a company's business, you begin to actually win what we call hearts and minds. And the moment you have that kind of mind share, then you're able to trade in the most valuable commodity across the business world right now, and that's attention. Everything will change in business. What will not change is the hours in a day. There's 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week. That's it. So basically, if you don't have the attention of your audience, whatever you may do, you will never really get anywhere because nobody will see it. You'll never really get people who are passionate enough about what you do to help you amplify the signal you're sending out. You will never find evangelists for your business. You will never really find your audience, really. So the struggle, all this humanizing element that we're talking about, trust, reputation, authority, is all about stopping the eye long enough for the mind to connect. And the easiest way to do that is a person. A face always stops us. A voice always stops us. And then we listen to reason, we listen to arguments, we can listen to the evidence and whatever it is that actually is being presented and make a different decision than whatever else we're going to do beforehand.
Can you think of an example where larger business might not necessarily want to do that? Like if they do want to just sort of present themselves as that corporate entity and not necessarily as an individual?
Well, no business wants to do that. This is the whole thing. Entire enterprise is set up to work in a very compartmentalized, process-driven way. And it's been like that for the last 120 years. And it's a very comfortable way of working, where you assign something to somebody, he's accountable to you, he goes, he assigns somebody else accountable to them, they have to tick off all the checklists, the things they have to do, he comes back, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, here's the report, it worked, this is brilliant, that's how it's supposed to work. Unfortunately, it doesn't, and the reason it doesn't is because the audience you're chasing, which also used to be compartmentalized, there used to be individual people receiving one individual message. If things went south, nobody knew. There was no comeback. Even if there was, you could bury it with impunity. Therefore, the process-driven way was the only way to go. And it was marketing by numbers. If you had 1 million customers, you could afford to lose 100,000 and there was no damage to your brand. You would get 100,000 more to replace them. But now, when you have a decentralized, highly connected, very fluid environment you're marketing to, the way you treat a single customer, whether it's right or wrong, is immaterial, is actually visible. And from that, inferences are made. So I come to you, I may have a grievance, and you may treat me really badly because my grievance may be wrong. But that doesn't become the story. The story becomes how you treat me. And suddenly, your customer service suffers, your brand image suffers, you have a social media crisis on your hands, and everybody sees a monolithic, faceless corporation crushing somebody who's powerless. And suddenly you lose 1 million customers. So therefore, this is the power that you get. And the only way to stop that from happening is to empower your own workforce to be able to make the judgment call necessary at a human level, which will help them meet, diffuse, and adequately address the social media crisis that's pending.
David,
But,
can I interject real quick? I just want to put it in very layman's terms, all right? What we're asking brands to do is the same thing they're asking of us. Trust, right?
Yes.
They need to trust in their own workforce. They need to trust in the ability of their own people. And they need to trust that if we say, go ahead and be exposed, that we're not going to rip them to shreds. We're asking for
Yes.
authenticity. We are being exposed as well. It's an equal risk, right?
It is. You're absolutely right. But internally, and this is where Greg's question is actually worth its weight in gold. Internally, brands are not really situated or set up to function that way yet. Because what happens, suppose Greg is a CEO and he works in a process-driven, report-driven way. He's accountable to the board of directors and he has to safeguard the shareholders. And you're asking him suddenly to trust his workforce, knowing that if they make mistakes and they damage the brand, this is all come back to him as a real impact on his sacred duty, within inverted commas, to safeguard shareholder values, to safeguard the brand equity of the company, and to safeguard the role he's taken in front of the board of directors. So in order for him to be comfortable to trust that to somebody else, he has to retool internally the communication system, how you create a culture of trust within the company, how you create accountability and team spirit within the company. And this is a real challenge. If you do it too quickly, you destroy the company. But do it gradually enough, and companies are addressing this. And we're talking about companies which are total monolithic multinational conglomerates that have 40,000 people plus working in 18 different countries with pretty much 17 different languages and cultures. And they're addressing this internally, step by step. They're gradually creating the systems necessary to have a fluidity in terms of how knowledge is shared, how information is shared, how accountability is apportioned, how the people are being trained to deal in a social media driven world, how they're being trained to be able to make decisions on the spot and think and make and turn on a dime. And it's not a quick process. I mean, companies I advise have taken 3 years to get to the point where they can comfortably say they have the beginnings of a culture of trust.
Right. I can totally see how that would be. Companies move slow, and I get that. Right. Greg, is there anything you wanted to tap onto that, or?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say one last thing on that. Was that it seems to me it used to be that smaller companies used to be able to use the internet to try and act bigger and build trust that way. The assumption was that the bigger you are, the more trust you're going to have. And you could see lots of smaller companies build great websites that were just as good as anything that Coca-Cola or Apple or Toyota could build.
Yes.
And they actually used that. They were presenting themselves as, this is me online, when in actuality they might be a smaller company. And it seemed like that was sort of a way of them using that to build trust. But now it's almost the other way around. It's these large companies using Hangouts and other parts of the internet to build trust through this more human connection.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you brought this up, this example, because let's examine why this sea change happened. Up till about the year 2005, when Facebook came along, let's say, the only measure we had, because everything was faceless and everything was at an arm's length, so the only measure we had of a company's ability to deliver was its perceived investment in who it was. So if you had, a mall and a skyscraper and a chain of shops across the country, you were unlikely to screw me out of $100 because, that wasn't going to save you. It's just a pitiful sum. Even $1,000 wasn't a lot to you. Therefore, when I gave you my $100 and I hope you're going to deliver, the pair of shoes I bought online, I was fairly confident that the risk on my part was small because the amount of money I gave you was negligible, which is why everybody was trying to be big and slick and professional and distant and faceless. And now we know that all this facade was really just a facade. Customers were getting handled wrongly all over the place, and we can see that now. So suddenly now we've gone into the opposite spectrum of the equation, where we distrust anybody who's faceless because we're saying, what are you hiding? We distrust anybody who appears too big and slick because we're saying, why are you spending all that money to convince me through ads? Just tell me what you do. Tell me who you are. I don't care about the ad. The ad is faceless. It's easy to buy. What I want is the difficult bit. I want you to come face to face and tell me, hey, I'm Greg, I'm doing this, I absolutely love it, and I want you to love it. And if you tell me that, I'm prepared to listen and make a judgment. And the equation through which trust is generated goes through 4 steps. We go through contact, we go through perception, we go through assessment, and we go through connection. Contact can be anything. It can be an advert, it can be a company, it can be a hangout on there, it can be a hangout, it can be a corporate literature. The perception is how I perceive it, and then what you do to overcome the perception and connect. If the assessment stage is correct and you've done your job right, then it leads to connection. At connection level, I'm yours. You've got my attention. I'm thinking, hey, Greg's a cool guy. I'm willing to listen to what he's selling because I may be buying. I may be able to suggest somebody else buys from him, and that's how it goes.
Fantastic. Keep going, Greg.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting stuff. One thing I'm just having flashbacks to marketing school. I've got a degree in marketing, but no, it's in a good way. Like I'm thinking, you know, when I was in school, and they've been teaching it this way for the past however many years. I mean, you've got the 4 Ps of marketing: your price,
Yes.
your product, your place, and your promotion.
Yes.
This is the kind of stuff they talk about in Mad Men. I mean, it's been around for ages, but nowadays, I don't think that's enough. I mean, you can put together your product and your price and have a great marketing mix, but it's almost like they should add an extra P in there and throw people into the mix as well.
Yeah. Well, they've transitioned from the 4 Ps to the 4 Es, and we had the 4 Ps was a product, place, price, and promotion, and we're going from everywhere. I'm trying to think now what 4 is because it's been a while since I've revisited this, and it's everywhere. Experience instead of price, instead of promotion, valuation, and evangelism. And if you are able to transmit, which is essentially a mutation of the original 4 Ps into a social media environment. You know, don't give me the product. Or rather, don't give me the place, give me everywhere. You know, I don't have to come to the mall to buy stuff. I should be able to find you everywhere. Don't give me promotion, give me experience of what you are. This is where we get the freemium models and we get free products which people try. Because if I don't know what you're selling, if you tell me how good it is, well, it's yours. You're bound to tell me it's good. You're not going to tell me it's bad. I don't believe it. But if I experience it, then I'll say, hey, you know, this is really cool. I'll buy this. And, you know, case in point, I think it's Evernote. It's a free version. The only thing you get if you pay more is you can have a better search experience, and you can also save PDFs. And, you know, for about a year I used Evernote, absolutely loved it. And I thought, why not go the full whack? So I gave them money every year ever since to go for the full product. And I know I'm underusing it because I also use other products which do a similar job. But they do such a great job, and I believe in it, and I believe in what they did. So I'm actually willingly giving them perhaps more money than I should because I believe in supporting what they do. And I know it helps a lot of people. And this is just an example.
David, I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
Are there any businesses right now that are doing this effectively, the engagement broadcasting? Because I know for a small company like ours, it's scary to just jump in and do a hangout online without really knowing any real examples of it being done effectively.
Absolutely. Cadbury's do it very well, and Cadbury's are big, right? And they're just as scared as you. And Topshop in the UK have done it incredibly well. Lancome, which is our cosmetics company, has done it incredibly well. And let's see how they did it, because the scare factor you mentioned is absolutely spot on. I mean, it would be crazy if you weren't scared. Because what we're asking you to do is you leap online in essentially an unscripted environment where you don't have any control except being you. And you're thinking, okay, is this enough? And what if it isn't? And these are huge question marks because, you know, this is not a joke. It's not a hobby. It's a job, right? And you're working to achieve something. So really what you should do is set boundaries and do small trials within certainly contained, not environments, but parameters. And Topshop do this incredibly well. They do it for Fashion Week in the UK. They basically put cameras all over the shops. They bring in shop assistants who become part of the online experience. They get the audience to engage. Lancome do it for cosmetics. They basically have a strong women following. Obviously, they have experts who come in and they do tips, and it's a live presentation, and anything can happen in a live presentation. They can take questions from the audience, and they also show those how to make yourself up live on camera using a model. And that generates a lot of engagement. What they've both have done is they've set parameters. They haven't said, you know, this is open, you can ask whatever and we'll do whatever. No, they actually set those boundaries which allow them to basically control, to some degree, their engagement, involvement, and have some safety measures where they can say, look, we're not going to do this right now because this is what we're actually doing. And then within that parameter, the ability to control the audience and control the message comes down to your quality. How cool are you? How good are you at what you're doing? If you're really professional, you really know your stuff, you're really an expert, it's going to come across. And if I'm the layman receiving this, I'm going to feel this because you can't hide passion. It comes through. You can't hide expertise. You get somebody who really tells you about a job they love. It doesn't matter if that job is making pencils. You're going to get excited because they're excited. And you think, this is, you're going to learn amazing stuff. And that's how you actually control that message. This is how you control the medium. And that is also where the element of trust comes in. But because it's a very transparent environment, the audience also gets that you're being brave here. You're laying yourself open. And that's a very human thing. It's the old Roman handshake where we each grabbed each other's wrists to show that there's no hidden knife up our sleeve. Immediate trust was actually created in a situation.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I'd like to back up just a second there because you put it in your book so well. Alex, I can't bring you into the shot, but I just want you to hear this because you and I have talked about this so many times. As far as brands utilizing it, you need to take a step back and just ask one question. And it's the first question you have in your list, David. Why? Why are you doing this? Because if you can't define that, you'll go awry with there's so many things that can be done with this. There's so many ways it can be used, and you're utilizing it in multiple ways, whether you actually realize it or not. Like, it's doing these things. Some of these things just happen. They just are. Whether you're measuring the metrics, whether you're capitalizing on them, whether you're taking advantage of it is up to you, but it's all happening. So start with, why do you want to do this? And then shape your program or whatever you're doing around it, because I've got slides here. I just want to put this up. It's a list of, this is from your book, David. I actually took some screenshots, so I'm showing some people some stuff. Again, you can hit me for plagiarism later. This is
it's okay. I love this.
This is a shot right from David's book, Google Plus Hangouts for Business, and I just want to read this section. And right here, David, you're talking about Hangout or Hangout on Air, and I'm just going to skip to. Here are some of the ways Hangouts on Air are used on Google+. Marketing, education, entertainment, branding, webinars, announcement, product reviews, product testing, broadcasting, services, interviews. And within all of those, I could come up with about 2 billion offshoots. All right. So when Victor says, what brands are using this and what are they doing with it? My answer really is, brands are doing what they can think of right now. They're at the tip of the iceberg, and it's open season, right? So start with organization. What do you think about that, David?
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And really the challenge here is to really understand to perhaps exercise a degree of empathy and understand what the audience really wants to hear. Yes. And I'll give you an example. Not based on your company, but let's say based on somebody like Cadbury's, for instance. And you think Cadbury's have an easy job. They're there to sell chocolate, right? And everybody gets excited about chocolate, but they don't get excited about chocolate if you tell them, we sell chocolates, come and buy them. That's not exciting. Nobody cares about that because you're telling me, I've got a product, you need to buy it. And my first question is, why should I go to Cadbury's? Why don't I go to Nestle? So really, Cadbury's win you over by showing you how chocolate is made, showing you how different types of chocolate are made, showing you about calories in chocolate and all these different things. They have recipes, they do stuff online where they show how chocolate gets from the factory to the selling floor. They do all this incredible stuff which basically creates a degree of transparency in the processes they have. And by doing that, what do we see? We see the people behind the company. Suddenly you realize Cadbury's massive corporation is made up of people, and they love their job, most of them, the ones we see. You know that they have a passion for what they do. And that's also transmitted across. We get passionate about it because at the end of the day, we also all like chocolate, right? Or most of us anyway. And you think, this is really cool. And then by that drip feed effect, they begin to brand themselves as the brand of choice when it comes to buying chocolate, because they work on that passion and that connection as people to people. Take it to Canada Gold. You know, the moment you say gold to people, all these misconceptions come up. All these misunderstandings are in front of their minds. They don't know the first thing about how do you buy gold. Do you raid a pyramid somewhere? Do you need to be a pirate? You know, what do you do?
Right.
Really? Yeah, I mean, do you meet somebody with a trench coat in the corner who'll go, want to buy a gold bar? I mean, how does it work? Demystify that. You know, the process is so complex at times, and there's so many things you need to take as steps, but it's fascinating. It's almost like a science.
Yes, it is.
Get people passionate about your company and your job. And I know to you it's everyday life, but to us it isn't. As laymen, we want to find out, you know, why don't we have the gold standard anymore? You know, if we did, what would happen? These are questions which are tangential to the nature of what you do, but at the same time, they help you promote your expertise, promote your own passion. You understand this a lot better than anybody else because it's your everyday life.
There you go. I love that, and I, you know, one of the things that we've been working on with Canada Gold has been what I call connecting the dots, and it's exactly what you're talking about. But you know, it doesn't matter what market you want to reach. You can always find some commonality, right?
Yes.
And you can create that commonality. And we used to call it hijacking the news, but forget the trends. Just find something in another space and make a connection, right? That's really all you're doing there. So
yeah, exactly.
It's great.
Like,
That's
and
great.
I mean, you know, if we all met in a bar, right? Forget to hang out on air, and we just had drinks. At some point, you would tell, you know, I would ask the question, "What do you do?" And you say, "Well, I work for Canada Gold." I'm thinking, do you carry a bar of gold to work every day? Do you take a bar of gold home? You know, you take your work home. What do you do?
Right.
I would ask you these questions, and you would explain partially what you can explain, and it'd be fascinating because it's amazing stuff, right? That's the stuff that needs to come out, which doesn't.
Right. And video makes that happen. I want to pull up another card and another quote from your book. Okay. And this one is so perfect for what we're talking about. I just love this. Again, everybody, this book is exactly what Alex and I have been talking about. This is it. I'm just going to read this. Video then has emerged not just as the primary means of visual communication in the 21st century, but also as the new voice of social media. This is a critical distinction. We do not easily associate video with social media, and this is a mistake. Social media is characterized by this triptych. And I just want to read the 3 words: transparency, accountability, authenticity, right? And the sentence you have after that is, YouTube and Hangouts are the primary drivers of this, and Google controls them both. It is just brilliant. You know, this is like finding the Rosetta Stone. You know, in terms of explaining and understanding what this is, how powerful this is for a brand. Social media has merged with video. The video is the media. And so as far as what you can do with it, how you move with it, how Canada Gold connects the dots, you have all the power in the world, Victor, because connect any dot you want. What market do you want to reach? All you got to do is listen, right? It's the most. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you, David. I just got to show these things.
No. I love what you just said. I think it's brilliant, and you're right. I mean, video gives us a shortcut because it gives us a direct connection. I mean, there's a million questions. If we were in a pub right now, I'd be asking a million questions about Alex's and Victor's jobs because I'm really fascinated. And to me, it's a closed world,
right.
And I have a million misconceptions about it. I'm pretty sure.
Right.
So, you know, I'd be asking those questions, and I'd leave the pub thinking, "What cool guys! You know your jobs, and you're really passionate about it, and what a world you move in." And I probably tell my friends about it, and they want to say, "Whoa, really? Whoa, sorry, we weren't here." And suddenly, through video, you can gain a massive following, a massive audience who actually believes and understands what you do. They believe in what you do. They are willing to support you in many different ways for a million different reasons, because of that connection, because of the transparency, because we get it human to human first. And everything else after.
Absolutely. Hey, Alex, I want to pull you in. Do we have any questions out there from anybody?
We don't necessarily have questions, but Cheryl Deuce I met her yesterday. She's been awesome out there talking to me. She says she would like to have a bar of gold. Me too, Cheryl. Me too. But I do personally want to. I think it's really interesting that Greg brought up his background in marketing, because I think for a really long time we've considered marketing and communication two separate fields. And this just makes me so excited because I see these two fields, these two worlds really merging with this new technology. I mean, I don't talk to the School of Marketing at all at Kent State. We don't communicate. Actually, the School of Journalism and the School of Communication, we are not friends. But it's really interesting because you're seeing these two worlds become one. We aren't just marketing is communication now. We're talking a lot about connection. We're talking about authenticity and all of these things. Where does that come from? Communication. It comes from sitting down in a bar with somebody and talking to them, and that person talking to another person. We call that, thought leaders passing on the message to the masses. Now we're seeing this. It would be really interesting to see if marketing schools and universities that teach a lot of this new technology, these new techniques, if they start borrowing things from the School of Communication, which borrowed to reveal everything, we borrow all of our theories and everything from the other social sciences. We're the bastard child of social sciences. But that, from my viewpoint, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, that's communication. That's communication. So that's that. I just think it's fascinating that those two worlds are starting to collide, especially with things like Hangouts.
Yep, I agree totally, and you're right. Your perception of two converging worlds between marketing and communication is exactly right, and the same thing we saw with search engine optimization and marketing, or social media marketing, which used to be two different separate fields, and one was hard metrics, one was soft, touchy-feely things, and now they've converged. If you're doing any kind of search marketing, you need to be able to generate trust. You need to be authoritative. You need to have a good reputation. These are human qualities. It's a transition. In the pre-industrial revolution, we didn't have marketing. We just had connection and communication, because in a traditional village setup, you'd go out of your house and you walk into the village square and all the stalls were there. And the stalls had people. And you met somebody and talked to them, and you got to hang a feel about them and what they were like, and you made a purchase decision or not. If you didn't know somebody, you knew somebody who knew about them because they had a reputation. Their reputation was really difficult to gain and very easy to lose. They wouldn't do anything wrong because, again, they had too much to lose in one transaction. They were there to give you the best possible service. And if things went wrong, and sometimes they did, it was a human-to-human connection, then you knew it would be set straight. We got into the Industrial Revolution where things scaled really quickly, and we invented processes and compartmentalized things and specialized everything, because that was the only way to achieve efficiencies of scale and also control the scaling process. Now that made a lot of sense. And we got this faceless, arm's length approach of actually dealing with everything that was metrics driven. And again, that made a lot of sense. But in the process, we lost that connectivity, we lost that connection. And social media now is giving it back to us because it's breaking down the silos. Suddenly, the human connection, the connectivity, the communication factor works first and best, and everything else follows. And the world is now turned into a global village pretty much, where your village square is basically your online world, and you think, okay, where am I going to go? If you want to buy something, you're thinking Amazon straight away, you're thinking eBay. Yes, and they have a very specific system for measuring reputation and safeguards. And then you think of the stores you trust, because either you shop there before or your friends do. So we're back to that village square. If you don't have a reputation, and reputation is the willingness to do business with somebody if you've never dealt with them before, which means you must know from your friends who they are. And that's a hard definition of reputation. So if they haven't got that, it doesn't matter how good they are. They won't get your business.
Right. And I mean, that makes it interesting that you talk about Hangouts and HOAs as a disruptive technology, and I love that. I love that phrase because it makes me think of diffusion of innovations, and which I know you're familiar with. I won't go into detail about it.
The what?
the diffusion of innovations. It's basically this idea put out by Rogers that you have, anytime you have an invention, it goes through this process of diffusion in society, and you have your initial thought leaders that pick it up, and if it sticks with them, then it will quickly spread throughout the masses, and you reach this peak, it follows the usual curve, and then it goes down once a new innovation is picked up by them. But what makes it interesting is that, you're talking about Hangouts and you're talking about the Village Square years and years and years ago. It's the same concept. So why are we creating these new technologies to create such a familiar concept of communication?
Global.
Yeah, it's global now because essentially, and again, the moment we introduce anything which is digital, it allows us to create an additional layer of control and also abstraction, which helps. And I'll give you an example. SMX London, we're all in a room, we're all listening to a presentation. Normally what happens, we've traveled for miles, some of us for tens of thousands of miles to get there, because some people came from the States. You get there, you listen to the presenter, what do? You have a question, you put your hand up, right? That's a natural thing to do because we're all in the same space and we traveled specifically to a spot to listen to somebody talk. But this is not what happened. As the presenter was talking, there was a specific space on the web where you went there and you put in your questions. You logged on and you left your questions there. And this allowed us to do a number of things. First of all, it took away whatever sort of friction was as a person who was in the room. Suddenly have all the eyes and everybody looking at you and you are trying to articulate a question. It allowed you to think better. Secondly, you could pose multi-part questions. Thirdly, you had the ability to actually be a lot more detailed in your question than you would perhaps be when everybody's looking at you and you're conscious that perhaps somebody else is waiting and we've only got a 10-minute window. And the last thing is it allowed the presenters to actually cherry pick the best questions. Because if somebody had a question which was also echoed by somebody else, they could pick the best of the four perhaps and deliver an answer that would answer it in a better way. So this is an example of how technology, servers, which are essentially thousands of miles away, allowed us to communicate better as people connecting in a room when we're basically just feet from each other.
Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the answer I was looking for. Good job. I mean, in communication, we talk less about control and we talk more about the two barriers that we're always trying to get over: space and time. Yes. Those are the two barriers that we, we're always working towards reducing them. But control, obviously, it's the same concept.
Yeah, well, I think of it as adding semantic density, and everything we do when we scale things up electronically or digitally now allows us to enrich it with a multi-layered level of communication, deeper meaning, and that's exactly what happened at SMX. By going online to post questions to people who just feet away from us, first of all, it was a lot smoother. Secondly, we answered a lot more questions in a given allocated space of time. And thirdly, the questions answered were suddenly better quality, which also released a better quality of answers. And everybody won in that one. Absolutely brilliant. It's a fantastic idea. And this is exactly the approach of doing anything digital today. You go to a Hangout on air, well, you're not just going there to broadcast like you would before. Go and buy a TV spot. You're not going to present a dried and cut message. Go and buy a TV ad. You're there to basically engage at a very meaningful, deeper way with an audience that will interact and engage back with you. But the moment you do that, you're dealing people with people. The chemistry begins to build up. Yes. The connections begin to build up. You find an audience which you thought you didn't have. You present them with somebody who perhaps they would never have met. And the next thing they do is also you create a deeper level of communication than you would ever have done in the past, and you get a lot of feedback back from them.
Yeah, that is. David, you are touching on so many different points of why, and this taps into a question that I think Greg has. Greg, I'm just going to push it out. You were tapping into the problems we have marrying traditional marketing, traditional concepts with this modern medium, and we're butting heads right now in our own. We've got a separate thing going on with Larry Live, trying to figure out how to do a focus group. And Greg, you had mentioned it earlier. We were talking about it, and here, let me see if I could pull you in here. Pink. There we go.
Yeah.
Use a little old school.
I mean, what you just touched on there, David, brings it back to perfectly. And I mean, if I may bring it back to marketing a little bit.
Yes.
Here.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Again, market research is obviously an important part of it, and one of the most powerful tools that we can use in market research are focus groups, where you get a small group of people with different experiences from different walks of life, all discussing the same topic, and the synergies that you get in that small group setting are amazing. And this is, a traditional component of marketing and has been for a long time. But after being involved in a few of these hangouts with John and seeing how they are actually quite similar to a focus group setting, you've got a small group of people, you've got lots of different experiences and lots of different conversations, but everybody's sort of focused around that one common topic, and you get these synergies out of a hangout that you don't get out of other mediums.
Yes.
And I'm just curious to know what your thoughts were on
I think
prospects of using it for focus groups.
Yeah, I think it's spot on, and it has an additional layer in that the moment you do, I mean, this is like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, right? The moment you carry out an experiment, the fact that you're carrying out that experiment begins to alter slightly the veracity of the results, or the reliability of the results you're going to get back.
Yes.
So if I put 10 people in the room and I tell them I'm going to ask them 10 questions, those 10 questions will determine the fate of the world. The answers they will give me, because they know what the questions are going to do, are going to be different if I just told them, I'm going to ask you 10 questions, it's a pub quiz.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're going to change the way they're thinking.
Right.
Now you get into Hangout on air, however, and everybody's really interested in the subject at hand. They really are trying very hard to connect with you because you're connecting back. You're not holding back. You're not saying I know things which you don't know and I can't tell you, and if you want to find out, buy my book, for instance.
Right.
You don't say that. You say, this is what we do, this is why we do it, this is what it is. This kind of chemistry is brilliant because then they're really open back. And then suddenly you see immediately what your potential audience is thinking. You see what the people you're marketing to are thinking. You're seeing how they're thinking. What are their touch points? What excited them? What turned them off? Because they will tell you.
Yes.
And I'll give you another concrete example. My previous book, Google Semantic Search, was the first book I wrote. I've written 7 books, but it was the first book I've written since Google Plus came along. And this is the Google the Hangouts one is the second one. And as I was writing, because it was the first book of its kind, I absolutely had no guidelines. And semantic search is really complicated. I could have gone any number of paths. I could have done with a focus group. So what I did is I basically put pretty much my research and my insights on the stream, and people interacted and engaged. And it was not really a conscious decision. I was just really excited, and it's really lonely writing. And you're writing locked up in a room, and you're going to be there for the next 3 months. So basically, I just, it's my way of connecting with the world. The feedback I got suddenly allowed me to make key decisions on how I was going to write it and what I was going to explore, which made it more accessible and more useful than it would otherwise have been. Now, my background is scientific. I did chemical engineering at university. I'm really happy with technical research, and when I get into technical research, I'm really happy regurgitating that back in a format which is technical. I'm really comfortable with that. And this was probably the direction I would have taken, because it's all in my head, and I get it. And this is not the direction I took, because suddenly I thought, this isn't going to do. I need to find the touch points, and I need to create a narrative which allows everybody who reads it to be able to absorb it, internalize it, and market with it. And I used everybody in Google Plus, and they easily and gratefully gave me back their time. I was really grateful for that, and I give a lot of content back in the stream as a result, because suddenly it became a very collaborative effort. I was doing something which excited me, and that was communicated in my posts. They got excited in return, and they gave me back questions and suggestions and all sorts of things, which allowed me to think, this is what I should be doing, and that's what they need. And that's what I gave back. So there you go. This is an example which actually has worked.
David,
Yeah.
I gotta, right there. I'm gonna need you to talk to our guys and what we're doing, because what we're trying to do is put together a focus group. We have an individual that's her expertise. That's what she does. Okay.
Yes.
But every time we talk about the engagement, she says, we can't have that. We can't do that because it ruins the validity of the data. And I keep saying, wait a minute, forget the validity of the data.
Yeah.
Write different questions. Find a different way to understand your data. But you cannot take your traditional focus group concept and apply it to a Hangout. Because
no, you can't.
You called it the Heisenberg. I love the uncertainty principle on that. You're right.
Well, you say she's right in what she says. In a traditional setting, what happens? Because the setting is unnatural,
right.
You set layers of questions trying to filter out the outliers, hoping that by doing so, you're going to normalize the results. Right. I mean, she's clever, and she understands what she does. Yeah. Normalize the results, so what you get back has some kind of veracity and reliability built in.
Yes.
But in a Hangout environment, this is fluid. People trust you. If you try to manipulate them, they're going to log off. They're going to stay there.
There it is.
It's not a focus group where people are locked up in their room and they have to, fill in a questionnaire or look at the things in the screen and press a button, and then they have to go. And, they get a chocolate bar in return or $10, whatever it is you actually pay them.
Right.
So people here are voluntarily giving you their time, which means they're already believing what you're doing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. Oh. People listening to us now, they're part of the audience. They're not people who are passers-by looking at a TV screen thinking, we're going to waste the next 5 minutes before I meet up my friend at the pub. They're willingly giving you time and attention, and they're willing to engage.
Yes.
Engage back. That's the only feedback mechanism that actually works.
So focus groups have evolved to simply be an open conversation with some guidelines, with some structure, because the pretense, the bullshit that you used to have to create in order to have that environment was all unnatural. And now we've just said, look, I trust you, you trust me, you want to know what I think about your product? Ask. Right?
Yeah. If you were a swordsmith in the Middle Ages, you want to make a sword, right? What would you do? You go up to the knight, and you say to him, what kind of sword do you use in battle?
Right.
And he says, well, I need something which is sharp, about 2 or 3 kilograms, can't be any heavier than that because my arm gets tired. It has to be double-bladed because, swing it back both ways. Has to have a pointed end. And it has to be, weight enough for me to use with one arm in case I get injured.
Right.
Okay. He said, great. He says, when I'm not in a battle, I like my sword to be, 6 feet long, massive handle, because it has to impress. He tells you these things.
Right.
This is a guy who's using them. You go home and you make a battle blade and a showman blade. And you go back to him and say, which one do you like? He goes, for battle I want this one and buy that one. Make it a bit golder.
Right. Right.
And that's what it is. That's how you did your market research. For people who are going to use it. Usually in a focus group, you get the most unnatural set of people in the world. They're not your target audience because your target audience usually is too busy doing other things. They're people who you hope represent parts of your target audience. And you have to dig really deep to actually get the data you need, which is why you need a large subset in a focus group in order to have that normalized range. In a Hangout, you need 3 people, 4, maximum 7,
right.
in a stream, and you got a massive picture of what's going on.
Yes, you do. So now I want to just tag on one more thing to that. So, and you and I are going to have a whole other show and just talk about some of the deeper aspects of this. We were attempting to put together a package for brands, okay, utilizing this for the purpose of just, well, here's everything, right? Basically coming to brands without your book, without something that organizes the information and saying, look, you can do the world. Well, we don't need it to do the world, but it can, right? And we didn't know what brands wanted, right? We're talking, big thing, like Procter & Gamble, big retail brands like that, the kind of people you talk with.
Yes.
Well, we found out what they were looking for was the simplest of things within Hangouts, right? They didn't want the show. They don't need the big production. They don't need any of the bells and whistles. They looked at it, we said, what problem do you have? Problem. We need our brand managers to be able to talk to customers, to find out what they like without having to travel around the world to do it and set up focus groups. Can you make that happen?
Yes.
Said, actually, Google made that happen for free. All right.
Yeah.
So now so when you tell that to somebody, they go, really? I can talk to that mom in her home or on her mobile phone, and my focus group can be centered at my corporate office and not traveling, right?
Yeah.
Right? I
yeah.
would think that alone is such a huge cost savings for any brand, right?
It is, and it fits in so beautifully with the collaborative culture we're in. If we believe in a brand, let's say Nike or P&G or whatever, what do we want that brand to do? We want them to be great at what they do, deliver a great product at a great price, and be great for the planet. So when we give them our $10, we feel we're also doing something good. If they come along and they tell us, "Hey guys, this is exactly what we do, and this is how we do it,
Right.
and what more do you want us to do?" And suddenly, we love that brand. They're talking to us. They're changing because they want to meet us halfway.
Yes.
We meet them the other half. And suddenly, that's how you get the evangelism kicking in. You say, these are great people. Why? Because I give them $10 when I buy my baby oil, and 99 cents of that goes to, I don't know, starving farmers in Indonesia, whatever.
Right.
But you think, this is great. This is what we should be doing. And we all think that.
Yep.
And that's how you actually get that connection. So you're right. These are the simple things which they hadn't been able to do in the past. These are the things which they need to do now. We need them to be human. We need them to understand us. We need them to show us what are their values.
I love that. We need them to be human because, after all, they are comprised of human beings. Please bring them out, right?
Yes.
I mean, I love that. It's like we're bringing everything is coming back around full circle. I know we're running over, and you probably have to go. And I want to open it up. One last question from
Okay.
you guys at Canada Gold, if you have anything.
Personally, I think David Amerland has enunciated the exact things we wanted to hear.
Awesome. Awesome.
I'm glad.
Yeah, this has been more than what we expected. Thank you, David.
You're more than welcome. You guys have an amazing job, right? We'd all love to know all the mechanics behind it.
Yeah, no, and Google Hangouts is giving us that platform. John, Victor, and myself, just yesterday, we prepared a little video where we just sort of discussed some of the items that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And for Victor and myself, it's not particularly interesting stuff. We do it every day. But John had lots of great questions for us, and that's a perfect example of where it's so valuable. John, being a layman, was asking us questions that we wouldn't have even thought of because they're, things that to us seem like a no-brainer. But this is a chance for us to connect with people from outside of the company and presumably people who could potentially be customers and learn about what it is that's important to them and what they want to know about our company and what we do.
Yeah, it's a lot like that analogy you said about, a conversation in the bar, and, it makes it personal. And it's that added layer, making it personal, and because it's personal, it matters to the customer, and that's what we want to hear. What matters to the customer. And that's something that you can only really get from doing something like this with engagement broadcasting or Hangouts on air with the focus group mentality.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, it's brilliant, and that's exactly the way to go forward. It's that humanization on both sides, right? You get to see who you're dealing with, and they get to see you.
That's just I can't wait to see where we can take this. I want to show one last slide. This is actually from our presentation, but David, you summarize this in one of the best ways. You separate these things between real time. You call it real time marketing as opposed to, I guess, standard marketing. But I broke it up into 3 sections. I just want to push this forward because you describe it really well in your book. But this is basically understanding the value beyond the effort, because there's the action you do before your event, then there's the actual event, and then there's everything that happens for the rest of time after the event. There's all the engagement that can happen around the finished product. There's the redistribution of the product. If you don't like it, you can chop it up into pieces and push it out differently. You can repurpose it, remarket it, retarget it on different demos. I mean, I think when you try to explain that to anyone, and they don't understand the base concept of what's changed, right? It's like, I wanted to open this by saying, first go read David's book on semantic search, okay? But don't worry about understanding it beyond the fact that it's changed, and then go buy the other book and start there, okay? Because I don't want people to spend too much time thinking about SEO. I want them to think about engaging, right?
Yes.
And that is, you said it in your bio. The biggest change that has happened. What is SEO today? SEO is about you being present. That's SEO in a nutshell, okay? You can forget all of the nuts and bolts and things that you and I have dealt with for the last 15 years and say, just be online, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's establishing identity. I mean, semantic search needs to know who you are specifically.
Right.
And it's not enough for you to say it. Everything else which you do, how you do it, what people say about you, how you operate, where else you are, everything else has to come together. And it coalesces into your identity.
Yes.
Hangouts on air, a part of it. Your engagement media, that's a part of it, because that's how you form your identity. The moment you form your identity, you're also a brand, but you're more than just a brand. You're a brand now with values. You stand for something more than just a logo. And suddenly, it's a very human thing, because identity means something to somebody. We know, for instance, that when you bring in Conan the Barbarian onto the scene, you know what he's going to do, right? He's got a big sword, massive biceps, he's going to swing around, kill all the bodies, and go off into the sunset with a girl. Because that's what he does.
Of course.
That's his identity, yes. But he's had a million comic book issues come out, and cartoons, and culture, and films which support that identity. So he's not going to act against character because we don't expect him to. We know his values, we know what he's like.
Right.
You bring in somebody who we don't know, and it has to be formulated. We see it through their actions. We see it through the way they engage. We hear it from their tone. We see it from the way they're dressed.
Yes.
Is he all dressed in black, wearing a mask and going, we know he can't be a good guy, right? We know that. But that's a clue. Now we need the actions to go with it. Okay, he force chokes people because they disagree with him. Not a good guy.
Right.
So, but you can see how identity, branding, brand values, search, semantic search, it's all one space now. It's all marketing. It's all brand equity. It's how people connect with you, why they will recommend you or why they will shun you. It's down to you now, right? Because you create it. You're in control, funnily enough, by feeling out of control because you trust people to get the message of what you do.
Yeah, beautiful. It still all comes down to trust and, being online, being present, and then understanding how to use the modern medium, video, Hangouts on air, Google Plus Hangouts for Business. Get David's book. If you know me, and Alex, you can verify this, you guys know I don't read books, right? I buy them, I look at them, and then I go, yep, get it, and I put it down. I haven't stopped devouring David's book. There's actually information in there that I don't know. I rarely say that. Look at my shirt, okay? So I urge everyone to get this, because if you don't understand the enormity of what Hangouts for Business can do, if you don't understand where things are going, if you don't recognize that we have a global communications platform that costs you nothing, then you really need to read the book, because it is the cheapest solution you'll ever pay for to understand how to be a modern business on the web. All right, and you guys who know me know that I don't pitch things lightly. So I would like to thank David for joining us today. And apologize.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, David. It's fantastic having you.
It's been a great experience and great meeting you, Greg and Victor. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, it was great to meet you too, David.
Let's get those guys in here. Here we go. There's Greg in the shot and Victor in our
Thanks, John.
Our limping system here. There we go. And there's Alex. So for Alex and myself and David, I'd like to thank everybody for watching today. This has been the Friday edition of Office Hours. Alex, anybody out there we need to shout out or say thank you to before we leave?
Well, Cheryl Deuce had to go, but she said that she'll come back and watch the end. I do actually have a question from Roxanne Riskin, if we can answer it real quick.
Sure.
She asked, do you see disruption and interruption as the same?
No, I don't. And they sound almost similar, but they're totally different. Interruption, essentially, is anything which sort of stops you in your journey long enough to sort of startle you and try to engage you. And it can become very obtrusive. Classic example of interruption marketing is when marketers, probably about 6 months to 9 months ago, used to do something outrageous, whether it was actually using swear words or doing something really extreme. Why? Because they needed to capture your attention. But the thing with interruption marketing is that it is copied very quickly, or it very quickly becomes tiring and boring, and then they have to go on to the next thing. Yeah. So its lifespan is very, very short. Disruption, on the other hand, is something which is done differently, and it can happen very dramatically, or it can happen gradually, like a drip feed kind of mechanism. Hangouts have been with us now for 2 years. They've been growing gradually. We're feeling comfortable now. This is disruptive in itself. I get people who tell me, I don't watch TV anymore. I get Google Plus Hangouts every week. And you think, what? This is so disruptive if you think about it. They stop watching TV and they actually watch Google Plus Hangouts, which you can incidentally watch them on your TV now if you have the Chrome environment, Chromecast. So that is totally disruptive technology. And that's a kind of disruption which basically leads to lasting change because we connect at something which makes sense. Hangouts, we don't give our time willingly if they don't make sense. And TV, I think, it's had its day and it's squandered it in many ways, right? So we're moving on.
There you go. That's beautiful. Perfect answer. Anybody else out there, Alex?
No, that's it for now.
All right. David's book, Google Plus Hangouts for Business, is available on Amazon, and I'm sure everywhere else you can find it. David, is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Where are you going to be soon? You're presenting anywhere?
I'm going to be in Warsaw in the first week of June. I'm presenting at a semantic search conference there, and I'm actually really excited by that because it's a former Eastern European country. Well, it's Eastern European country, former Soviet country, should say, Soviet bloc country. And, holding this kind of event there in countries like that is absolutely fantastic because it helps diffuse the kind of knowledge that the people there need in order to power up their technology and they power up their economies and actually change their own fate a lot faster than otherwise. So it's going to be awesome.
I'm glad you said that. So if anybody's over in Warsaw soon, David will be there. Or if you're paying attention from Warsaw, because this is global. And, that's what I love about this. We get people from there. One of these days, we've got to do a hangout with you from there and just broadcast it, all right, from wherever you're at.
Yeah. That'd be brilliant.
It'd be awesome. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I think we've bothered all of our guests enough. We've run over an hour. Gosh, this looks like one of our old shows, Alex, in terms of terrible times. But it's disruptive and it's new, so we can do what the hell we want.
Absolutely.
I've got no FCC guidelines to adhere to. I can drop F-bombs. Which I actually... that's a whole nother conversation. I gotta stay on point. This has been the Friday edition of Office Hours with me, Alex, David Amerland, Greg, and Victor from Canada Gold. We've had Roxanne commenting out there and a bunch of other people watching, I'm sure. And if not, they'll pick it up at some point in time because that's how web video functions. We're not really concerned about live views. If you'd like to know more about David Amerland, Google him. If you'd like to know more about Canada Gold, Google them. They're out there. They're on the web. And they're doing this, which is broadcast engagement broadcasting, Google Plus Hangouts for Business. It's the new medium. It's called conversation in a global space. So for Alex and me, it's Friday. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.